Alright, so this video is going to be just a quick video on even and odd functions and how to determine if a function is even or odd. So let's first go back to the idea of a graph, right? What does an even or odd graph look like? So let's start off with a basic even function, something like x squared. So x squared, we know, is this parabola, right, the quadratic, that is at 0, 0, right, symmetrical on both sides. So if we take that function and we input some values, so for example, if I put in x equals 1 in, 1 squared is 1, I get a 1 out. If I put a 2 in, I get a 4 out, so 2, 4 is also a point. If I come over here to the other side at negative 1, right, negative 1 squared is also 1. And if I put a negative 2 in, negative 2 squared is 4. So you'll see that we have a lot of these similarities, right? No matter whether I put a positive or a negative 2 in, I get a 4 out. No matter whether I put a positive or a negative 1 in, I get a 1 out. Right? That's an even function. So an even function, by definition, if you have a function like y equals f of x, if you evaluate that function at negative x, it's the same as the original function, right? If you put a negative number in, you get the same value as if you put the positive number in, as we can see in our graph. So let's look at some of these examples here. I guess let's talk about an odd function first, and then we'll do them all at the same time. So an odd function, right, if we have y equals x cubed, it's a graph that looks like this. If I put the point 1 in, I get a 1 out, so the point 1, 1 is on my curve, 1 to the third is 1. If I put a negative 1 in, negative 1 to the third is negative 1, so it's the opposite, right? The negative of what I got in the original. If I put a 2 in, 2 to the third is 8. If I put a negative 2 in, negative 2 to the third is negative 8. So you can see if I put a negative value in, 1 to negative 1, I get a negative answer, 1 to negative 1, or 8 to negative 8, etc. So we can say that if we have a function, if I put a negative value in for x in that function, I get the exact opposite, the negation of that original function. So this is what an even function looks like. This is what an odd function looks like. And then we also have the option of neither, right? If it doesn't meet either one of those categories, it's not even or odd, it's neither. So if we look at the examples, let's look at number 3 first there, because 3 is an easy one. So if our function is x to the third plus 4x, right, the first thing I want to do is say, okay, well, if I input this negative x in for x, right, so I change all of the x's to negative x. Well, then I get this value of negative x to the third plus 4 times, and instead of x again, I put negative x. If you have multiple x values in the original, you switch all of them out for the negative x. And then you start to think, right, if I have negative x to the third, well, a negative number to a third power, negative times negative is a negative, so negative x to the third is indeed a negative x to the third. And then 4 times negative x is negative 4x. So then you take this function and you compare it back to the original. Is it the same? Obviously not. Is it the exact opposite? Is it a negation of the original? Right? Well, if I multiplied the original value, or the original function, by a negative, what would I get? Well, I would get negative x to the third minus 4x, so this is the negative of the original, right, the negation of the original. So this is indeed an odd function, right, the exact opposite. I would get the opposite values out, as you can see in the graph, as I did the original. All right, let's take a look at a different function here. Let's take a look at this number 8. So if we have f of x equals x to the fourth minus 2x squared plus 4. And I want to test it. What happens if I put a negative x in? Well, that would be like this. Right? I take all the x's out, and I put this negative x in. If I do that, I have f of negative x, well, a negative number to the fourth is a negative, 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 which even powered, right, that would give me a positive value of x to the fourth. Negative x squared would also give me a positive x squared, so that would be negative 2x squared plus 4. So then you look at this new function we have, how does that compare to the original? You'll notice that they're exactly the same. Right, if they're exactly the same, they're even functions. Right? It's an even function. All right, let's do one more. Let's go up here. Let's do number 2. So number 2, we have a function that is negative x squared plus 10. So negative x squared plus 10. If I put in a negative x, so let's see what happens here. So I put a negative x in for all of my x's. I know that if I have a negative x squared, that's positive x squared times this negative, negative x squared, and then I have this plus 10 on the end, right? Plus 10 on the end, well, that looks like an even function to me, right? Negative x squared plus 10, exactly the same even function for that as well. So if it's exactly the same as the original even, if it's the exact opposite, right, everything is the opposite sign, the negation of the original, that's an odd function. And if it's neither one of those options, we just call it neither, even, odd, or neither. So that's that. I hope it helps. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.